In this movie, I'll show you how to create a workspace in Xcode for following along with the exercises in this course on a Mac. Any version of Xcode from version 5 to the current version should work fine for this course. I'm using Xcode 6.1 with Mac OS X Yosemite. Xcode is free on the Mac App Store. It requires a modern Intel-based Mac running a recent version of OS X. I've already installed Xcode on this Mac, and I've placed the exercise files on the desktop. So I'll start by firing up Xcode, and from the File menu, I select New and Workspace. I have a folder called CPP-ESST under my Documents directory. I've already created that folder, and I'm going to name this CPP Workspace, and I'll press Save. So now I have an empty workspace, and I need to add some files to it. So I'm going to select the plus down here in the lower left-hand corner and add files to our workspace. My exercise files are on the desktop, and so I want to select that folder, and that of course has all of my exercise files in it, but I want to just select this exercise files folder, the whole thing with all the subfolders in it. You want to make sure that copy items is not checked, so just like this is fine. Create folder references is fine, and I press add. And now I have a reference to my exercise folders. It didn't actually copy the exercise folders. This is simply a reference to the exercise folders on the desktop. Now I need to create a project for working with the exercise files. This is not a project, and Xcode will not compile these files directly from here. So here in Chapter 1, we have these files, but Xcode will not compile that. It needs a project. And if I press this plus, you'll notice that there's nothing down here that says Add Project. So what I need to do is I need to right-click anywhere in the empty space here on the left-hand side, or Control-click. I'm going to press Control and click my mouse button. And down here it says New Project. It'll create a project and it will add it to our workspace, which is what we want. So New Project. Under OS X, select Application and Command Line Tool. All of these exercise files are designed to run just as a command line tool. That way we're focusing on the features of C++ and not on anything that has to do with a particular operating system. We're just learning about the language. We're not going into how to create applications that will run on a Mac or will run on Windows. We're just learning about the language itself, and a command line tool is the best way to do that. So we're going to create a command line tool. I'm going to select Next, and I'm just going to name it Working. And organization name, identifier, bundle identifier, none of that's actually used. So I can just leave that alone. The language should be selected as C++. And I'm going to press Next. We do not need a Git repository. Won't hurt, but we're not going to use it, so I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm going to add it to the workspace and the group of the workspace also. So I just select Create. It'll put it right here in this same folder, our Documents CPP-ESST folder, and I'll select Create. And now we have a working project. So inside this working project, it has a working group, which is fine, and it has this main.cpp, which we're not actually going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm pressing the Delete key, and I click Move to Trash. So that's now gone, and I'm just going to drag this hello.cpp up here into my project, and I want to drag it into the working group here. And you'll notice that depending on how I move my mouse, that little circle can either go left or right. So I'm dragging that file into that folder, and I want to make sure that copy is checked for this, and add to targets working is checked, and I just click Finished. And now when I select this, I've got my code there. I'm going to organize my screen a little bit just because I have such limited real estate here. And this will work great for what we're doing. For your purposes, you probably have a lot more screen real estate and you probably don't need to organize it the way that I do. But this way, I've got the maximum amount of space for my code and a little bit of space for my console down here, which is where the results of the code is going to be displayed. And so at this point, I can just press this Run button here. This will build and run in the current scheme, or I can press Command B on my keyboard, which will just build it. or I can press Command R on my keyboard, which will do a build and run. I'm usually going to just press Command R on my keyboard. I'm a keyboard guy. My fingers are usually on the keyboard, and it's just the most convenient way for me to do it. You can do it however it works best for you. So this has compiled and run our little Hello World program, and you see down here in the console, it displays the results, Hello World, and a little message that the program ended with the exit code 0. We'll get into that a little bit later, what that means. But for now, notice that the results are always in bold down here in the console, and that's what we're looking for to show that the program is running just fine. The purpose of a Hello World program is to test your environment. It's to get your development cycle going, to make sure that everything is working just the way that you want it. And if you make some changes in your code, like for instance, instead of world, I can make it say Hello Bill, and I can save it. I'm pressing Command S on my Mac keyboard and run it, pressing Command R, and you see now it says Hello Bill. So I have a working development cycle. I can make changes to my code, and my code will run in my environment, and so I can test it. Now, as we go through this course, we're sometimes going to need to change the file that's here. We can only have one of these files in our project at a time. The reason for that is because there's this main function, and you can only have one of those in a C++ program at a time. That's the main entry point as defined in the language. So if I were to put another file in there with another main, it would create an error and it wouldn't compile and run. And so instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. Let's say we're in an exercise and we're going to change to a different example file. So I'm going to delete this. I highlight it and I press the delete key on my keyboard and I select move to trash. And then I grab another one of these. Let's say cpp11.cpp, and I drag it into my working folder. I make sure that copy items is selected and the target is selected. That shouldn't change between actions here. I select finish. I highlight the file inside the working folder there, and now I have my new C++ file, and I can just press Command R and it'll build and run it, and I get my results. The purpose of this file, this cpp11.cpp file, is to test some modern C++ 11 features that don't exist in older versions of C++, that are only in this current version of C++. So we can make sure that we have a modern compiler that will compile the examples for this course. So this one, it uses an initializer list, that's a new feature. It uses the auto type, that's a new feature, and the range-based for loop, which is a new feature. And all of these things are running if we get this result 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that. So at the end of each lesson, we're going to delete whatever is in our working project here. So I'm going to highlight it and press the delete key and select move to trash. And then we're going to run clean. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. I tend to use the keyboard, but from the mouse menu, you can select product and clean, and you see it says Shift Command K. So if I press clean, it says clean succeeded, or I can press Shift Command K, and I get exactly the same result. What clean does is it gets rid of the executable and all the intermediate files from the product. Intermediate files are created by the compiler whenever it compiles something. And if the date and timestamps on those files aren't exactly right, it can get confused the next time it tries to compile something. So I will always delete and run clean at the end of the exercise files. So now we have a working Xcode workspace for following along with the exercises in this course. Xcode is an excellent IDE, and Clang, the compiler that comes with Xcode, is a superb compiler. This combination provides a great environment for this course.